COT's base of operations is right here at thecouncilofTime.com. COT has no other outlet or venue. These are other folks who will rebroadcast. Anything COT does is by the main page here at thecouncilofTime.com. Good evening to everybody out there. Let me get my voice adjusted here. Test, test. How do you guys hear me? Okay. I can see everybody. Good to see all of you there. All right. We're back in Revelation. Guys, and I just sat down from last night. Boy, do we have some things to go over tonight. It is another day. I don't feel like a clock is counting down. And it's Wednesday. You guys know what this day is, right? Wednesday. So it's going to be dissected or partitioned, we could say. The earth will soon undergo some things, and I hope that you guys understand something. Does it seem to you guys that there are so many stories about what's happening to the earth and to people and in government? Doesn't it seem like something is off as far as information, right? Articles, all these things are. They're not, well, let me put it to you this way so that you understand. Because if somebody did understand what was happening in the background, in today's world, it is very difficult, if not impossible, to communicate. Very difficult, right? So let me ask you this. With all the information that the world has received, has it been useful to people? Or has it simply, I guess they use the term, gaslit people? Has it been useful to your individual journeys from the news, from, various places? Or has it been just noise? Not the Christian communities, not those. I'm talking about the world. I noticed, as of late, weather is a pretty big topic. In fact, since February of this year, weather has been a big topic for a lot of people, right? For newscasters, there were some big changes in the weather broadcasting core itself. They had switched over a lot of people, and but has it been informative and useful? I noticed during this last hurricane, that's still, by the way, going up through a few islands, but people really didn't pay attention to the news. Too many people got caught in the middle of that storm. They did. There are dangerous situations no one seems to care about. No one. The USA right now is in a very dangerous situation. I do not believe the end result is going to be what everybody's looking for. I simply don't. I'm not the only one either, right? But it seems like all of that information dealing with the USA's position on various things is covered by a bunch of political combat, right? You guys remember before this year started, in the middle of last year, you guys remember that term governmental war? You remember that term? You guys kept saying, what's a governmental war? Well, you see it now, don't you? And it's only the first step. Only the first step. Sad to say that. It's only the first step. Many of you were talking about something else last year. You had a common fear about something. I believe that you were beginning to discern something very real. Now, since then, no one has actually mentioned this term. It's a term. Very common term. Historical term, but no one has used it. It seems like things are going down that road. And I really do hope that you guys are prepared. for the USA to be rearranged. And I do mean rearranged. I hope that you understand what goes with that. And in the middle of that, see, our Father's involved in all of it. So there's something you have to realize. We have gone through war, great wars. We have gone through conflicts, right? We have gone through some natural disasters, some. For the most part, it's been man-made troubles we've gone through. We've seen genocide. We have. Now you're in the middle of a governmental change. Hopefully everybody now understands one of the broadcasts I did last year, how the government would change. And in order to get a government to change, in order to put everybody under a brand new system, you have to make the first system seem as though it does not work. You remember that? When the first system does not work out for people, they will demand another system, another way of going forward. And because of corruption, because of opinions, because of egos and pride and everything else, it's not a very tamed situation. Unfortunately, people are going to find out a little too late what this deal is. And hopefully, I'm prayerful that the church will intercede, continue to intercede. But listen, hear me. When a person who believes in the living God intercedes in the life of another, by no means do you tell the person what they want to hear. You don't feed anything in that person, but you request from the Most High real change. Real change. When the Father answers, he can cause self-reflection in a heartbeat out of any of us. Why is this so important? The bears are coming, and no one is going to stop them. No one. There are going to be bears in this nation. There are going to be bears in Europe. There are going to be bears in quite a few places. No one's going to stop them. You guys remember a dream I shared with you all about some white bears that had patterns on them like a dog, a beagle, or Jack Russell's. You guys remember that? The brown and black patterns on the bears made them look like, giant dogs in the shape of a bear. But indeed, they had dog patterns on them. Last year, in the month of, right before Thanksgiving last year, and I had that dream. That dream was a long time ago. I'll tell you the dream first. It'll be relevant pretty soon. Those bears, there were two white bears. They were quiet at first, and no one knew they were there. They had patterns on them, black and brown, like a dog. They were walking around, and everybody was terrified. I was terrified because I witnessed one of those bears go into a person's house. I heard the person scream. I'd never heard a human being scream like I did in that dream. To date, I've never heard anyone replicate a scream like that. The scream I heard was not some normal scream. It was a scream of someone that was in a position that no one, not even the dead, would want to be in. You ever hear a person scream, and then that scream gets more intense and louder? Then it gets more intense and louder. Then it's horrifying, intense, and louder. The person kept doing that, as though when the bear attacked, whatever the bear was doing was horrifying. The scream was so bad. It really shook me. That scream shook me, not a monster. The bears didn't scare me. The scream scared me. I mean, it scared me. Now I'll admit, I don't operate by fear. But that scream, I'd never heard a human being scream like that. I've heard people do some pretty horrific screams. Nothing even close to that. The bear came out of the house. It was nothing but silence. Then they went into another. It was two bears at first. I saw one go into a house, the other one did not. They were looking for people. And they were very selective in the homes they would go into. Every time they entered into a home, you knew in your soul that was it. So I had some kids with me. I took the kids. I ran into this house and went up into the attic. I held them close and I said, do not say a word. Don't say a word. Don't make a sound. And I was praying that those kids would not do anything silly or crazy. So we would not draw the attention of the bears. They continued. And then I heard one scream very close. It's like it was in close proximity. The person screamed. And then the person screamed as though it was like a horror scream. And then the person screamed from their soul. Whatever those bears were doing, they did something to the soul of a person, as well as doing something to the flesh of the person. Because I still don't know what the bears were doing. There was not a bunch of noise, not a bunch of anything, right? If they entered into a house, that was it. And I remember the kids, I had to keep them quiet. I was praying that they would be quiet, that they would not draw attention. These bears were horrific. After that, the fear I felt was so intense. I was in a cold sweat when I woke up from that. And it really disturbed me for at least about 4 to 6 months because I couldn't discern what in the world that was. Last year, right before December, before November, I had another dream. And it was just like the one I had before that. You guys remember within the last 3 years, I told you guys about a dream about these people. They were having a get-together, right? And a bear came out of nowhere and began to tear people to pieces. You remember that? And the people were oblivious to the bear. They were having a celebration. One of those bears had come. Should be one of the archives somewhere. Last November, right? The Lord showed me those white bears again. Upon seeing them, I was frightened because I knew what they were going to do. But this time, I found out what the patterns were for. It's going to sound weird. Those patterns represent people. And there were more than 2 patterns on them. The bears were completely white. The patterns were brown, black, and a yellowish pattern. All of them were working in tandem. The people. Those bears. I only saw 2 in that dream, initially. Those bears were coming out from everywhere, and you could not hear them take not one step. They gave no warning, no notice, no anything. And they knew exactly who they were going to. They did not look around to see what they could get. They knew exactly where they were going. It's like these bears were operating from some sort of a list. Well, after I had that dream and the bears were doing what they were doing, because they were everywhere, I began to think about all of my dreams. There's a running theme in all those dreams. I personally believe the Lord is showing me the impossible. That's what I believe. Now, these dreams are archived, of course. You guys have heard them. But I believe the Lord is showing me exactly what that means. There is no warning you can give a person, because people right now won't accept a warning. And then we have days like today. Today we had some big changes. There have been some big changes in the world today. Strategy-wise, laws are changing. Soon it will no longer be a factor of who's correct and who's wrong, who's winning and who's losing. That won't matter. It's not going to matter. Because each person will begin to separate themselves and do what they feel they must to continue. The bears, well, I think you guys already know what part of the bears are, right? I think you already know. What you may not know is that the bear is not by itself. The bear is not alone. It's not. You know, in the Bible, it talks about a bear with 3 ribs in his mouth, right? 3 ribs in between the teeth. Then we look in the Bible and we see that 3 kings had to fall before one little horn rose. 3 kings had to fall. Are you guys keeping count here? 3 kings had to fall. How many kings have fallen in the last 12 years? Anybody know? It's rare to say this, but I'm just wondering, does anybody know how many kings have fallen? The whole kingdom gone into disarray because the king was actually taken and there is no replacement. You guys remember Gaddafi, right? Remember that fella? That was a good example of a king being taken, right? Of one not rising again. Something consuming its power. What you may not know are the agreements that have taken place overseas. That's another topic. I'm just discussing changes. And then we have today. Today was a bit upsetting to some folks. And some others were nervous. Why? Because there are new movements taking place around the globe. War movements. People are, and there's something else happening, and I hope that you guys can see it, especially those of you that pray. I don't know how else to communicate this, because nobody outside of the faith would understand what I'm about to say. There is a tactic that is often, it's just ironclad. It works against, it works too well throughout history. When you embellish a king, right, the king will let his guard down a little bit. When you embellish a king, when you lift a person up a little bit, you can begin to get by. You're no longer an enemy, right? When you bestow upon a person gifts, and those gifts are received, it can sometimes blind you. People who care not about the lives of their own countrymen how could they care about a foreigner? Hmm? How could a king who was okay with a lot of his people dying and suffering every single day, and then at his own hand ordering the suffering of other people, how could that person care about some other leader from outside the country? Hmm? There had been moments of open mics, and it's almost like a lot of people don't want to hear it. France, right? France had an open mic. China, they had an open mic. Some other folks had an open mic, and it's clear what's happening here. The problem is no one wants to look like the fool or somebody who fell for somebody else's tactics. And some people cannot speak about this because they are, in fact, too close. And that would compromise. Somebody would take it the wrong way. Right? But can you see what's happening in the world? There's a phrase in the Bible that says, those that feed up a portion of his meat shall destroy him. This is part of a principle. That is a very old principle. When a king or a person, any person, when gifts are bestowed upon a person, you better believe, according to Proverbs, is for one of two reasons. It's either out of great gratitude, or it's a tactic because somebody will require something of you. They will require it of you. Now, in our case, that requirement could be to simply satisfy a person so they'll never look in certain directions, so they'll never catch on to what's happening. It's true. If you do we've seen that, we've seen that in school, we've seen that in different settings, that sometimes you can catch off guard when a person gives you something and, they honor you, right? When they do that, you're willing to overlook quite a bit. In the case of the world right now, I believe that's a big mistake. A huge mistake. And the reason why I say that is this. All too often, just like you all, you guys will understand this. Many of you expected people who did not believe in the Lord the way you did. You expected them to respond nicely, to respond in certain ways, because you have loving ways within yourselves. You have peculiar ways within yourself. You thought the other person would respond, where you can forgive, where you can move on. You thought somebody else would do the same, but the problem is, you guys, you buddied up to people that did not believe. And when that happens, the darkness will always come out of the person you thought would be a whole lot better than what they turned out being. The true issue is their spirits. If they don't believe in Christ, there's a serpent in them. If they do not subscribe to Christ, if they reject him, there's a serpent in them. There is no neutral person, and they will strike. And how many people have been in relationships, and you believe in the Lord, but the other one, the more you believed, the more they did not, the worse things became. Because as soon as you began to move spiritually, doing the right thing, the serpent came out in them, didn't it? And it forbade you from living up to your full potential. See, many of you were held captive like this. Because in your mind, you did not see what was coming. Do you know why? Because of gift, because of niceness, because of politeness, because of certain promises kept. But the problem was Christ was not in them like he was in you. They did not regard Christ like you did. See, when it comes down to the base of all things, there is darkness and there is light. There is no in between. If you're a vessel of the Lord, if you believe in Christ, and you're gifted by one who rejected Christ, the serpent will strike from that person who rejected Christ at a time when you really don't need it. A serpent always seems to strike at the right time, don't they? They strike when their opponent is vulnerable. They look for vulnerabilities. A snake does not want to bite a person 50 times. They want a killing blow. They want a kill shot. Because Christ is not in them. When Christ is in you, you plot a goodness upon another person. Do you know that? When Christ is not in you, you plot murder. It's that simple. It will always boil down to that. And how many of you have lived in that situation? You plotted a goodness. In other words, you did things to bring about a good end, a good tomorrow. But you found that everybody else, those people that didn't have Christ in them, they had plans to kill you off, to suppress you, to hold you captive, to limit your faith, to control your faith, to stop your dreams. And they made you believe just like they did. So long as you were obedient to them, they were okay. So long as you were in favor to them, they were okay. But the moment your faith began to shine, a serpent came out in them against you. Didn't you notice? Now, many of you should be familiar with this situation, whether it be a marriage, whether it be just a simple relationship, whether it be a friend in your life. You know that when someone has rejected the root attributes of Christ and of Christ himself, and just saying you believe in Christ is not enough. You know when a person is living by the standards of Christ, and you know when they're not. You know by their conversation. You know by the way they can forgive people. Have you ever noticed that these people with serpents in them, they don't forgive people. They will demand that you forgive them. But they in turn do what? They have a target to talk to you about on a continual basis. Haven't you noticed? They give you hints all day. A serpent cannot help but to flick his tongue. A person who does not have Christ in them will always talk to you about a target. That's when a serpent flicks its tongue. They do that to sense their surroundings. Haven't you noticed? The same thing is happening with all leaders around the world right now. All of them. All of them. And it's going to boil down to, do they have Christ in them or not? The Bible says, everyone that says, Lord, Lord, is not his. So think about that for a second. That means everybody who calls upon the name of the Lord, they don't all belong to the Lord. Everybody who talks about the Lord they don't all belong to the Lord, whether it be preaching, teaching, whatever the case is. There's a character in a person. When a person has a character that aligns with Christ, then they have Christ in them. Now, it has nothing to do with a perfect walk. In the world you live in right now, people have mastered the presentation. I'll say it again. People have mastered the presentation. This has been going on for some time now. They have mastered their presentation. Do you know what happens if I could do something, right, that all people would do is give me praise, just me, not the Lord, but me, right? Then I have perfected a presentation for them. But if I do things where you give the Lord praise, then I've been obedient. If I do something where you guys praise me, I perfected the art of presenting something, right? Very easy. We were at some point, we did that to each other in times past, right? But it happens. So people can fool people. But when a person will lavish another, the same person that they hated a couple of weeks ago, that they plotted against a few days ago, if they begin to compliment the person, you know why they're doing it. People do things for the sake of advantage. The sake of advantage. To buy time. To finish setting up things. And in this world that we live in, if the church is not interceding, who can see what's happening right now? Who could see? Today, and it will continue, you're right in the middle of a few build-ups. Nation are very savvy in what they're doing. They're setting up. They're setting up even inside America and Europe. There are people inside setting up. Now, this is not one side is right and one side is wrong. It's not what this is about. This is happening all over the globe. There are many leaders right now. They're trying to survive coups. Many leaders right now are receiving more threats from the inside than from the outside. And in this atmosphere, of this hostile atmosphere, nations are aligning. But then when a person walks away, they align with somebody else. Suppose you're in a household with somebody and they tell you every day they love you, but they're working a job, right? And they're in the household, but they give all their money to a person 5 houses down from you. But now they tell you every day they love you, but they're giving their money to the house 5 houses down from you. In other words, they're speaking with their mouth, but their heart is far from you. Do you hear me? Just like the Lord used that passage. He said, they honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. That's what Jesus said. So in this case, you have to start looking at where a person's heart is. It's not based on what they say. What they say can deceive. Listen, from everywhere, from all sides. This is not about one person. This is the status of the world. It is something working within anybody it can. There is a spirit in operation, or spirits plural, working in anyone it can. Anyone that does not have Christ at that moment is vulnerable. Very vulnerable. You live in that time now. Even in our own government, you hear what's being presented to the people. You do not hear the vileness when the mics are off. You don't hear the threats people have for one another. It is vicious. I mean vicious. It's not very good. I'm sure that many of you feel that tension. You're having hopes for a good outcome. But of course you can see that everything is happening by force. That was the word the Lord gave me last year. That things would happen by force. And you know where I got that from? The Bible. The Lord just confirmed something in the Bible. This man of perdition that's coming forward, he's just not going to pop on the scene. He's going to have people in position when he pops on the scene. But he honors the God of forces, a strange God. And if he honors the God of force, right, and he worships a God his fathers knew not, then he's not going to worship any God that we're familiar with. Not going to worship any God we're familiar with. He's going to worship something else. To worship something is to voluntarily observe something. It's for a person to put something before everything else. But before that man of perdition comes forward, many will utilize based on the spirit that's going to operate within that son of perdition. That spirit's going to be in the earth. In the Bible, it states the apostle said that the Antichrist spirit has gone out already. Many have gone out already. So we know that spirit's in operation. And he who now letteth will let until it be taken out of the way. Then that wicked will be revealed. Until then, it's concealed. It's concealed, and if it's concealed and it's not revealed, then no one knows who this person of perdition is. Because if people could find out themselves, God would never have to reveal it, now would he? But God said that person would not be revealed until he who letteth will be taken out of the way. The enabler, the one who permits those things to happen, when he's taken out of the way, everything will become visible. Because it is in the way, it obscures the truth of iniquity itself. That's why the Bible says the mystery of iniquity doth already work. Mystery means hidden. Hidden iniquity already works. Only he who now letteth will let until it be taken out of the way. Now, if he has to be taken out of the way, an act of force. Notice the Lord did not communicate to his apostles by way of the Holy Spirit that he was going to just, move himself out of the way. No, it said he's going to be taken out of the way. He who letteth will let until he be taken out of the way. If he has to be taken out of the way, and he's the one hiding the iniquity that you cannot see. Now the mystery of iniquity, because it's hidden, but it went out already, then we know that hidden iniquity is based largely in the spirit realm. You're dealing with some entities, obviously, of some power. And he's hiding the true intent of a great many things. Did you hear me? The true intention is being hidden. If iniquity is hidden, then the true intent is hidden. So long as the true intent is hidden, then everything spoken in the darkness is not coming to light yet. But when iniquity is no longer hidden, then everything spoken in the darkness will be yelled from the housetops. You're close to that hour. You're close. We're not there yet, but you're close. Because once iniquity is shown, it's when the upsets come. And one of the books, right? Because we all know what happened back in the 1800s and 1600s with the Bible. There were some books that were taken out, right? By a specific council. They took out certain books of the Bible. They did. And today we know why they took them out. We have those letters of admission. We know why they were taken out, because they were building government. And those books, all the books that were taken out, spoke against the kingdoms of this world. Do you know that? All of them. Isn't that something? All of them spoke against what mankind inspires to do. If you take a look yourself, they start speaking against riches. They speak against men having power over other men. And during that time, the church was the government, and the government was the church. And they said, we can't have that, because they speak directly against us. And if somebody reads this, they're going to say, we need to be moved out of the way. But in those books, it reveals quite a few things about this time we live in right now. Quite a few things. I mean, to the letter. To the letter. In those books after the book of Daniel, there were some more things. The mission of Babylon, you could say, is very consistent with the Word of God. The problem is you've had people who have forged documents saying that they were part of the Bible too. You have what was uncovered in Egypt, right? Those books that were found in Egypt, the Gospel of Thomas and so on and so forth. You have those things that were written by the Essenes that people have discovered. And so they add some sort of validity. But they have long since found out what they truly were. Back to those books that were in the Bible, the Apocrypha, right? Some of the Bibles today do not have the original Apocrypha in them. They don't. They have a different Apocrypha. It's like a sick joke. But in those books, it talks a lot about our time, the atmosphere, the conditions of mankind, the hidden iniquity it talks about, how smart man would become, it alludes to. It does. So it confirms some things. And the language is different in some of those books, so the interpretations of those books are not quite as astute as the King James Version. The King James Version is enough. The Lord will not have you in the darkness. He will reveal to you directly what he needs you to know. You can believe that. That's how those books were written in the first place, by inspiration of the Holy Spirit. So God will do you the same way. When you need to know something by the Holy Spirit, you're going to know it. Just like they did, you'll do the same. You'll know it enough to write it, that you'll be able to write it, not forget it this time. That's what happens when God reveals something. Not when he gives you a pearl, but when he reveals something to all of us. Then you can write it down and it's not taken away. But if he reveals a pearl to you, and if you write it down and attempt to tell someone, it'll be taken away. Many of you already know that. And if you didn't, you know now. Because you're saying to yourself, oh, that's why. When I try to write down those special insights the Lord gives me, the more I write, the less I can remember what it was. That's right, it's taken away because it's not time for that yet. So when the Lord gives you a pearl, don't attempt to articulate it to everybody. Wait for his instruction. When the Lord gives all of us something, then all of us are going to have it. All of us will. Remember that. In this world, men have perfected the art of presentation. Something else is working behind the scenes. Something you're right in the middle of. The Bible reveals that men will turn against one another. That children will conspire against their parents. Listen, it specifically states that the parents will no longer be parents, that children will have no fathers. That's what it states. That the parents will attempt to appease the child. One of the direct quotes states that the children, right? The children will be against their fathers. Now, if you think about that one thing, why would a child be against their own dad? Because their dad wasn't there. That's the way society has made it. Dads, it's not your fault. It's the laws of the land. You remember the time when they said you could not spank your children? You remember that? Don't lay a hand on your children or you will be jailed. And some people were, well, lots of people were persecuted by that law. They couldn't lay a hand on their child. Their child went to school and turned them in. That causes instability in the family unit. Remember how people used to look down on divorce? You remember that? And even before marriage, nobody could get married until they were counseled. Do they really have that today? No. Does the community come behind a couple to have them talk things through? No, because community does not know the couple. I'll tell you something. When two people are joined and the family is around those two people, do you not know that the family can counsel them and get them through just about anything? In today's world, though, because of media and television and because of shows and rotten books, when the family gets around, they want to instantly vilify one or the other people, right? One or the other person. And so they have learned to split people up. There's no counseling getting people together. You know what happens with a child when they have no parent? They become wild. They become rebellious. So what happens to an adult whose parents are not counseling them anymore? Rebellion. And why won't parents counsel their children, even at the age of 24? Because of rebellion. And the parents, if they go out of the way and a child is raised up in rebellion, they're going to have children. And guess what? Nobody's going to be able to tell them anything. Because to have a community come behind them and support the love in a relationship, the right things it doesn't exist. In the 1980s, there were lots of people who grew up in a broken home. And when those people grew up in the 80s and had children, right, they were broken. They did not know how a community works. They didn't know. So it was a lot of hatred that was, brought into the family unit, and the family unit was torn apart. That's why many of us can talk about our grandmothers and our grandfathers and those priceless relationships they had. But something happened to the generation after them, and they were playing around. That's when music took off. That's when money became a big thing, and everybody was chasing drugs and money. That caused a lot of broken homes. Then we had crooked government, and everything else happened, didn't we? Because of entertainment. People emulated the movies they saw. They emulated the books they read. Most responses from people these days are just like the movies and books and the music they heard. So there is a brokenness. And in prophecy, it states that the children, especially the children will hate their dads because of the brokenness in the family. Moms are raising children these days. Let's go ahead and face it. There are a lot of single mothers. Lots. You have a lot of young men who are angry at their dads. Angry. Now that has caused something else. Do you know what that caused? It caused a lot of young men to love their children no matter what. As a consequence of that, guess what happened? You have a lot of people defending their children even when their children are doing some very bad things. So everybody thinks their child shouldn't be punished. When you spare the rod, you spoil the child. And what I'm saying is that people are not spanking their children. They're not correcting their children. They're negotiating with their children. What kind of child will come of that? A bunch of people negotiate with their kids, right? The children get in the cars and tell their parents what they want to eat. It's just like the Bible said. It is just like prophecy was declared. Now we have a broken society. And that brokenness has crept into the church, hasn't it? You know how sometimes people twist the scriptures to defend themselves, to look good in front of everybody else? That's their major concern, is to look good in front of everybody else. So they hop into the self-defense. If you hear a person hop into self-defense, then they're more interested in defending themselves than the Word of God. Have mercy, this is where we are. These, by the way, are the end times. These are not the beginning times. This is not the middle. These are the end days. Even the idea of why we're here. I'll say this, and I'll take a break, and I'll expand on it. Do you know that none of us are here so God can save us from everything that happens to us? Do you know that? That big problem that comes into your life that you're struggling with, that's called training. That's training. But just like on a 4-mile, 10-mile, 12-mile, 24-mile run, when a person is running, right, they're not really used to running. They're going to want to give up as soon as they begin to breathe hard. They want to give up, right? Now somebody has to come alongside them and coach them through that run, because they want to quit every single step. Why? Because they're tired, they're fatigued, they're feeling pain in places they never thought they had. It starts to hurt. They want to give up. In some cases, you cannot talk a person into continuing that run. But guess what? Guess what? That run, right? That run is necessary to get a person in shape. But the person is not going to like it. They're not. And sometimes you can't even help. You know it's training, but sometimes it can be so difficult. You cannot help but to think of the comfort you had prior to that run. You know what happens to a person that continues to do that? And they want to quit every run they have? They never realize that new people start running behind them. They never realize that. And as in their minds, they're still running every morning, but they want to quit. They're not voicing it out loud. This is what they feel inside, but they want to quit. But the other people behind them are looking to that person saying, wow. You know what's happened? The person that's running and wants to quit continues to go through that every morning because they've become a blessing to everybody else and they don't even know it. Imagine that. Imagine that. The person that's running and is running every single morning and wants to quit every step of the way. And they're complaining inside. Yes, they are complaining. And all they can think about is quitting. But they continue to go forward. They have become a blessing to everyone behind them. In life, many people want to quit. But have you guys noticed there's something in your life that won't allow you to quit? Have you noticed that? That's your Father. Why would he allow a blessing to quit being a blessing? Every arduous step in your life is indeed a blessing to somebody else. Don't you know that? Because when you see a person going through something pretty rough, but they keep going, is that not encouragement to you? Did Moses like what he was doing? No, he did not. He didn't. Oh, here's a big one. Did Jesus? Did he have this same sentiment upon his life? Remember when he said, Father, take this cup from me. You remember that? So we know it was in him, but it was a blessing to all of us. I'm trying to tell you something. A blessing in this world is not what these authors of these movies, it's not what they say it is. God sent blessings here to this earth to the ones that believe in him. That struggle that they see in life is training. While they train, they become a blessing to everybody else. They become just like manna. You ever meet somebody who's just like manna? You ever have someone in your life, they're just like manna, and they don't know it? And the only way that they can do what they do is by suffering, and you know they've been suffering, but they continue on, and they're like manna. They're exactly what you need. And the Lord didn't make a mistake. You know what the mistake was? Somebody let the serpent narrate the story. That was the problem. Just like in the garden. The serpent opened his mouth. If the serpent did not open his mouth, Eve would not have gotten the wrong picture about life. See, when the serpent speaks, you think life should be different instantly. You think somehow it should be different from what it is. God didn't make a mistake. No, the serpent tried to change the narrative. That's how he makes us stumble. You know, when you're in life and you say, I'm not supposed to be going through this. This isn't supposed to happen to me. Let me share this with you. The wise wisdom, the words of confidence that you guys have, where did they come from? They did not come from your good times. The attitude of perseverance did not come from your good times. They came from your worst times. Remember that time you could barely hold on? You don't know how you held on, but you were still there. But then when you got through it, somebody else came to you and said, I'm ready to give up. You said, no, don't. Just hang in there. Where did that come from? That didn't come from a good time you had in life. No. That came from an awful time in your life. That time you thought was awful. See, that's what people call it. Awful. Training. When you think everybody has abandoned you at the end of that trial, that struggle, they didn't abandon you. When you're empowered, you become spiritually intimidating. Did you notice that when you go through those hardships, the people of flesh are nowhere to be found? What happened to them? It's when they back off, isn't it? It's when they back off. What makes them back off? The light within you becomes stronger and stronger and stronger. Do we like it? No. I bet you an engine in a car, if it had a personality and a brain, would hate all of us. I bet you your car engine would hate you. There's no way that car engine wants to run like that every single day. He doesn't want to do that. It gets too hot. It's about to burn up. It's small explosions taking place. Daily heartburn, gas, you name it, it's got it. It doesn't want to do that. But guess what? It's a powerhouse. Isn't it? That engine is the blessing of that car, isn't it? Because without the engine, the car is nothing. No matter how pretty it is, no matter all the gadgets that work on the inside, without the engine, it is nothing. The engine is the blessing of that car. But guess what? The engine is under the beauty. Is it not? You ever look at your own life and you start looking at everybody else and you say that person's recognized and that person's recognized and that person's good to go and look how easy they have it. Look at my life. You ever do that? Why is my life this way? Why is it so lonely and dark and rough? And nobody can recognize the good I'm doing. Why? You're just like that engine. No one, you know what, a person does not open up their hood until the car stops running. Isn't that funny? Well, if the car's running and it doesn't make any weird noises or anything, right? You're just going to use the car and enjoy it and do your thing, right? Do you know what happens if the engine breaks down? The hood's coming up. All the people inside the car are going to have a frown on their face. The car's a piece of junk now. Why? That beautiful car is a piece of junk because the engine does not work. But when the engine was working and nobody could see the engine and they saw the rest of the car and the gadgets and the beauty, oh, the car was everything, right? Take the engine out and then reevaluate the car. I tell you that hidden engine is the value of that car. There would be no beauty without the engine because it would be a worthless piece of steel, wouldn't it? Or plastic or carbon fiber composites in this day and age, wouldn't it? What do you think you are? And you know what Jesus said in the Word of God? You're not revealed yet. In fact, he said, you are to be revealed when he is revealed. When he's coming in the clouds, when he comes here to this earth. When he is revealed, you will be revealed. Until that time comes, you're hidden. You're expecting people to see you for who you are, and they cannot. They can't. They can't. But one day, the engine is going to be gone. Can you imagine in the USA, in Europe, in the world, if all the engines of every single car was missing, was not there? What would happen to this world If all of a sudden all the car engines were gone, what would happen in this world if all of a sudden all the combustion parts of all this machinery, right, the heart and soul of this machinery, all of a sudden was gone? What would happen? Life would be for naught. That's what would happen. All this stuff would be for nothing. This world will fall apart. You and I both know that. It would fall apart. Well, guess what? Isn't that what happens in prophecy? You, the hidden element in the earth, the blessing in this earth. You're not appointed to God's wrath. So in fact, there is a time when you're no longer the engine in that car. And everybody realizes that all blessings are gone. But until that time, you got to know what you are. If an engine of a car thought it was the back seat, that car would have problems, don't you think? Can you imagine the engine of your car giving a voice? It would say, well, I'm not supposed to get that hot. I'm not supposed to, partake in that. I'm not supposed to do that. The car would go nowhere. But when everything is working right, the engine is working hard while everybody else is relaxing. Isn't that something? While everybody else is having discussions, right? Eating their food and everything else, the engine is close to the point of explosion. In fact, there are multiple explosions that take place inside that engine every single time you run it. They run those cars to the point of breaking down. Why do they do that? That is the power of that engine. That's how you rate the power of the engine. Your life is the same way. All the important components to something are always the hidden components. Do you know that? I've never found anything where the absolute critical component was something everybody could see. It's like a principle no one can escape, right? Your phone has a chip in it. Without the chip, it does not work. The food, right? Somebody cooks good food, invisible ingredients. Think about it. You're a living blessing in training, who's being empowered. You're overcoming all things every day you live your life. And the Lord made it so. One day, the vindication will come, and you'll begin to see the fall of the wicked. You'll experience the harvest. And by prophecy, these things will take place. When the saints of the living God, this is a prophecy, when they begin to say within themselves, maybe the Lord has forgotten about us. I hope the Lord hadn't forgotten about us. You know that's a prophecy. Do you know that's one of the trigger prophecies? That when the saints of God begin to, when they start thinking this way from time to time, and truthfully, how many of you have thought you were a little saddened as though God has forgotten you? That's right. Somebody says, how long, O Lord? There it is. There it is. That is the sentiment. That's what people will have within them. And as of late, how many people have been saying this? I used to hear my grandmother say, keep going, never stop. That's what I heard her say. Right? I used to hear, people my parents' age, like my parents, they would say, we got to get this thing right. That's what they would say. We have to keep going. We have to do all of what we can do. Only in this generation have I heard lots of people say, oh, how much longer do I have to keep going through this? And you do realize that back in our grandmother's day, back in our great-grandmother's day, right, they had it worse than we could imagine. Yet, they were full of resolve. But now, people have it within them. When nobody's listening to them, when they're all alone, when they really begin to contemplate life, they say, how long, Lord? How long? How long? In prophecy, it states that when God's children get this in them, when they start saying this, everything will begin to happen. Everything. Most of you don't know that back in their time, they were like a car running on a flat road. You're running uphill. You're not on a flat road, you're running uphill. There's no way your grandparents could put up with what's going on today. Some of you were blessed enough to witness that disconnect. You could see your grandparents and you know for a fact they could not accept, nor would they want to see any of what's happening today. Some of you have parents that began to see the moral decay to such a height it made them physically sick. You're living in a world full of darkness, and you're still going forward. That's an impossible story. It's just normal to you because you were born in it. But I'm telling you, you live in the impossible time. You live right now in the impossible time. I'll be back in a few minutes. The earth is shifting, changing. That change will affect every human mind on the planet. I'll be back in just a few minutes right here at COT. Did you guys notice today your internet hanging? Anybody notice that today? Especially on Microsoft sites. Did you guys notice that? Microsoft updated their services, all of them. So you guys might want to take a look at that. Also, they have forced conformance on the internet that takes place starting next week. That's going to be something. I know that here in COT, we got everything. But unfortunately, you guys know how cheap I am, right? Somebody had issues with Microsoft. Yeah, a lot of people did. We're going to have to go to Visual Studio 2022-26, right? I don't own that for COT yet. I use that in other capacities, but I can't use that for COT. I have to actually buy that for COT. So there's that one. And so there are going to be a host of services that have to be. You're going to have to be. It's a forced conformance across the board, right? So all the cheap people like myself, because we don't use WordPress. We don't use that third-party stuff. We don't do that. We work with core code. And so we're going to have to use the brand new software environment for that with the conformance parameters in there, right, for some of the new standards. So I have to do that. That'll begin next week, which means, well, that's going to be a story within itself anyway. So some of you guys, be aware of that. Be aware of that. Yeah, they already did the update. So right now your systems are starting to, update. They already changed the operating system. Apple changed theirs. Windows changed theirs. So that means all your Macs and iPhones and everything else is going to shift. All that stuff is going to change. AI is fully incorporated into the internet right now. And it's just going to be something else. Some of the newer tools, however, they do have benefits. They do, as far as security. And that's one of the main things, is that a brand new type security platform is coming across the board. We know we're flipping to biometrics. That's why COT has to upgrade to the Visual Studio's 22-26, 2022-26. And once we do that, all the conformance measures will be in there, right, for logins and everything else. They're going to consolidate your logins with a lot of things, okay? We all know that's coming. We all know that all these companies are set up for biometrics, and you spend a lot of money on that and a lot of time. I was in that, so that's what we're doing there. That's what we're doing. Somebody said they were noticed that Duke Energy is going digital next month. Yeah, they also have to conform. All the power companies, all utilities across the board, they're in a mad dash to upgrade the networks and everything else. They're standalone systems. They don't use third-party, plugins like WordPress and all that either, because they have to be closed network systems. We have to do the same thing, right? And because we already have an AI in COT, that platform will be very useful to fight the nosy AI in the other places, right? So that it can keep tabs on what AI is doing externally. But that's our thing, right? Hopefully everybody else will adopt that same thing. What happens if you don't have that? Well, to other people it may not be a big deal, but freedom of speech is not going to be what you think it is soon, right? So these things are already happening. There are live filters for communications, and there's a lot of changes coming. Not to get nerdy, these changes are rolling in fairly quickly. Somebody said, so COT will be biometrics to log in. No, we're going to stay with our system, right? I mean, if anybody has biometrics out there, if you have to use that, we're also going to add an option on COT, right, where you can actually use that to log in if you want to. But it's important that COT remain locked into itself, so to speak, right? Because for example, most of these websites are developed using other core systems, right? So if that core system has a mandate, all the other sites will change automatically, not COT. That won't happen with us. We want to control our own content, right? We want to manage all that. Because we don't allow the language they use on these other sites. We certainly don't have the media and everything else from those other sites. We have to stand alone in our standard. We're going to keep that standard too, okay? We're going to keep that standard so that we are not going to be in conformance to all their stuff. Not going to do that. And it's largely, if you guys require biometrics, it's not a big deal to incorporate that there, but it will be standalone biometrics. It's not going to report back to any clearinghouses for data, right? We're not doing that. We're not connected to big data. We don't sell cookies or information from COT to anybody else. We don't make money off your accounts. Most other sites do. We don't do that. So all your information here at COT is here at COT. It's not anywhere else. Anyway, that's that, right? So we want to keep a standard of our Father's standard in this place. So we had to be careful of what we join ourselves to. And plus, there's another principle at play, right? It's best for us to stand alone. We are somewhat controversial also. We are. We know a big thumb is coming down on people's what they can and cannot do in the internet. It really is a different time coming. It really is. A different time is coming. We all knew it was coming. So it's finally around the corner, right? And there are lots of different demands that they have for those who operate data centers and everything else. There's a lot of learning today there. So when they said your phone tablet was updated, yes, I suspect that all devices will be updated by the turn of the month. So there you are with that. It's happening quick. It's really happening quick. And then, since you're utilizing a computer, just understand that. But it's happening very quick. These changes are happening quick. There is a end result to these changes, right? They have to control what people can see. Now, I know that sounds weird, but they have to control what you can see. They have to control what you hear and how you hear it. They have to control that. And with the advent of AI, it's happening right now. So don't be surprised if slowly but surely you begin to notice everybody around you changing. And if you're not careful, you're going to change yourself. Because if the narrative changes, right, if all narratives begin to change, people are going to change with them. They're going to change too, okay? So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. All of these things are changing. All of them. We're very close to something we all see coming in prophecy. Very close to it. And it's going to be forced. If a person does not want to use it, they're going to be out of the loop. But the system is robust. And everybody is, they're ushering this in quickly. They are. And of course, they're going to spin it and make it seem like a good thing, but we all know what the end result is. All of us do. Right? All of us know what the end result is. And sadly enough, some entities will not be able to be on the internet anymore. Isn't that something? It'll be the first time since the internet was that they can actually not allow people on the internet. That's true too. So, and it's something coming up. Kind of caught me off guard there. A few minutes, I had an alert here. I had to go check on that. So, we'll keep everything in the loop as it comes about. Though you guys will be duly informed as much as I can. I'll keep you informed, and the more we can secure a site for our own topics, the better, right? The better that's going to be. Because I think it's important that everybody knows exactly what's happening. For those people who have information, not sensationalism either. Workable knowledge that will allow you to see in real time the things that are taking place. I think it'll be very beneficial, especially for believers. Especially for believers. Anyway, back to our talk. The earth is, you remember, guys, the other day, or for a couple days, I was telling you guys about what we have been going through, right? Today matches, or this common era that we're in right now, it matches something that happened a long time ago. To their estimate, not mine, about 40, 45, 50,000 years ago, right? The earth went through a type freeze event. Is what happened. It went through a freeze event. When it went through a freeze event, certain things happened in the earth prior to that. Now, they got this from the geologic record, of course. The weather was one of the notable phenomena. It was. Solar activity was similar to what it was today. They can actually measure radiation output from the sun in the earth back during that time. They do it very carefully, so science is good for doing that. But just like 2025 took people, it kind of took them by surprise. The sun exceeded their estimates. In fact, for the last, 5 years, the sun has been very different than what they thought it would be. It's either been below the mark of activity or well above it. As a consequence of that, our atmosphere has been changing drastically. We also have hiccups in our magnetic field, and that's one of the most important topics a person could educate themselves on, is magnetic field. Believe it or not, now, let's eliminate some things here. Believe it or not, is a solar flare, is it going to be one of the number one topics? That's not even a starter subject. And let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. They know what they found in rock. They know what they found in the dirt. They know that animals were still walking around when they were either frozen to death or burned up. They know that animals were found in glass. They know that layers of iridium, there's more than one layer. And it has a unique signature. They know that galactic cosmic rays, there was a buildup on the Earth. Right? The magnetic shielding of the Earth became sporadic. The poles began to move, just like they're doing today. The North Pole has shifted out of position and is wobbling and making its way to another location. What that truly indicates is a change inside our planet. We have a change inside. See, now, global warming would be that's a subject indeed, but global warming, I personally believe, is a byproduct of what's happening between the sun and inside the Earth, right? And what's happening outside our solar system is affecting the sun. And the sun, in turn, affects the Earth. Now, we're protected from galactic cosmic rays by our magnetic shielding. Why? Because radiation follows magnetic lines of force down to the poles, and it enters into the Earth, right? Where it helps generate more heat inside the planet, keeping us going. And then that will in turn generate a magnetic field. There's a process for that. What's been happening as of late is that the Earth has been absorbing quite a bit of these particulates, these highly charged particulates. But our magnetic shielding is starting to become chaotic. 45,000 years ago, they noticed a time when the magnetic shielding was in a chaotic state. And what that means is it was the magnetic field lines of force were collapsing and building and collapsing and building, right? So radiation was making its way through the planet. All types of UV were being soaked up by the planet. That's not good for life. So, but they did find out that human beings were living in a time where UV was penetrating the magnetic shielding. But it will slowly irradiate things. It will. So it will change crops. It destroyed crops or foliage, which changed animal migrations, which altered everything else. The weather patterns were changing. Atmospheric pressures were very different, right? Volcanism was a big deal. It was a big deal. And all this activity on the Earth sent up low-layer clouds, highly reflective low-layer clouds, which reflected light back out in space, causing it to become very cool in certain places, and we went into an ice age, right? We know about that. We know about the ice age. Now, the process of the ice age is the same thing we're having now, except now it's reversed from what it was during the ice age. It's reversed. Now, there's another subject they don't often discuss. The Earth is not always been going in the direction it's going. In other words, the sun has not always set and rose in its current position. You know, there have been some changes. In our case, they have an understanding that, back then the equator had moved some, 2,000 miles or something like that. And it was not stationary. It was up and then it was down, right? Above the ecliptic, below the equator, the equator was shifting all over the world. Now that brings water damage to all the different places of the Earth. Floods like you wouldn't believe. Continental drift like you wouldn't believe, right? Our equator is going to move again. We've already started the chaotic era of this time that we're in right now. They also noticed that during that time, and this is an estimation, of course, they also noticed that as the magnetic field lines of force became chaotic, so did humanity. Humans became highly aggressive. They started to fight each other. They started to do quite a bit. Quite a bit. They did a whole bunch. A whole bunch. They almost killed everybody off back then. Something else happened too. There were a lot of dark-skinned people on the earth and brown-skinned people on the earth, and something happened. The earth went into a night period. This is in science. This is what they believe, so bear with me. They believe that during that night period, people lost their pigment. Anybody know why? The less exposure you have to sunlight, you're going to lose your pigment. You're going to become lighter and lighter. That goes for people today. If you took a dark person and only exposed them, right, to the night, they would lose their pigment because they wouldn't need it. The pigment in the body is for several things, but for the most part, it absorbs the sunlight, right? It reflects sunlight in certain ways, but it makes the sun harmless to you, and you can generate vitamin D in direct sunlight. You know what happens when your pigment is gone? When you get real light, you can process vitamin D with very little sunlight. That means a little tiny bit of the sun, with a little bit of it, you can process vitamin D. And that is true in Caucasians because they can absorb, their bodies can produce vitamin D off very little sunlight, very little sunlight. But the darker you are, right, it becomes very difficult to process vitamin D at nighttime. Just not going to happen. Which means during the winter months, you're going to be very different, right? So that's that. So different tribes, right? They were separated, of course, and people took on different attributes based upon their climate. From the lip size to the nose size to all these different sizes of different things, people changed to suit their environment. Small changes. Just like now, right? I'm going to tell you something that's cataloged. If you really have a strong desire to do something, but you have no talent to do it, you know what happens to your children? Anybody? They're born with a more skilled ability to accomplish what you could not. Whenever you have a strong desire within yourself, should you have children, they're going to master whatever you had a desire for. So if you wanted to sing or something like that, right, you're going to have children that they're going to have a high chance of being able to sing. If you wanted to become a mathematician and you really had a strong desire for it, but you couldn't quite get yourself to become that mathematician, right, you're going to pass that on to your children. Your desires change your DNA. They do. Just like your beliefs change your DNA. It does. That DNA can be passed to your children. And it's inheritable at that point. That's why these kids come out of the womb working cell phones and tablets and everything else. They already have that knowledge. They do. Even a small child who's never seen a cell phone before, for some reason they know how to slide their little finger. It's like their little finger is made to slide over the screen, right? I think it's funny because it looks like small kids are picking boogers. Yeah, that little finger just looks like the kid is picking their nose or something, but they're sliding their finger all over the screen. And they can pick it up very quickly, right? It's not confusing to them. Not at all. They adapt quickly. So that happens, right? Every desire that you have, all these things can become transferable to your kids. And they are more likely to be able to achieve them quite fast, right? So any true desire that you have, you're going to pass that desire to your kids. It is going to be cultivated. And you know what? That's what used to happen in society. A person would begin a work, and they would do that work, and their children would continue in that work. And then their children would continue in that work. It would. That's how it would happen. You have things in you that are through your entire family line that you may not know about. That's why some of you have dreams of situations. You don't know how that dream formed. It's very foreign to you, but it's almost like it was in the past. It's probably genetic memory. It's in your DNA somewhere, right? Your DNA responds to frequencies quite well. That's also in a disclosed CIA report. Do you guys know that? Anyway, That's in there also. So let's just say that back in the past, some things happened. The opposite of that is happening today by the same exact mechanisms, except this time, this is going to be the last time. I believe this is the fullness of the cycles that began a long time ago. I believe that's what's happening. Think of it this way. It's kind of like, we have the 4 seasons, correct? But if we ever crash into the sun, we're going to have no more seasons. So we're at the moment now, right, by way of comparison, that we're about to crash into the sun. This is it. This is the last one that we're in right now. And what's happening is the magnetic shielding is becoming very chaotic. Now, so why all the rain and everything? Why do we have that? Well, the more you heat the atmosphere, the more potential clouds have to carry water. So the heavier they're going to become. If because they have a potential to be heavy because of the heated upper atmosphere, of course it's going to rain a whole lot more than what it usually did. So your average thunderstorm is going to drop a whole lot of rain. But they also faced something else. Lakes were evacuated back then. In other words, the fresh water levels went down. They went down in many places. Many places. Right? Earthquakes began to happen in a very strange way because of water distribution. The continents could not stay where they were. Everything was shaken up. And when everything is shaken up, magma is dislodged. And when that happens, when magma is dislodged, you get these giant eruptions, right? I heard somebody was talking about can't be the volcano in Italy, right over Naples, Italy. It's in bad shape, right? It's causing gases to come up from the water. Bubbles are coming up from the water. Homes are being eaten into by some very vicious gases, hot gases, right? In the walls, sulfuric, there's a smell over there too in certain places. Roads are being lost. It's not the only one. Listen, that is a super volcano. That's what that is. It's a super caldera. Let's call that one a super caldera. It's 12 kilometers, I believe, in the earth. It is quite large, and it's expanding. They know for a fact it's expanding. To start to expand. That's not the only one. Tall is also cutting up in the earth. So we have quite a few volcanoes waking up. They're starting to wake up because magma is building. Why is that happening? It's a very simple process. As the sun is acting out of character, right? The earth is going to act out of character too because the sun is being affected by galactic cosmic rays just like the earth. As they continue to pour in, all that radiation is being diverted to the poles, taken in, right, to the planet. And when you have all that energy coming into the planet, it will increase the heat inside the earth. As that heat is increased, it's going to melt more rock. It's going to melt more rock, okay? When it melts more rock, that's more magma. But the more you have, the more magma you have, the greater the pressure is going to be because magma always comes with gases, which is going to push out. It will expand chambers. Magma will then melt more rock, which will be more magma, and then it will find a way out. That's what we see happening right now. That process continues day and night. So at some point, right, even though it's very difficult to track, if volcanism has increased, that's very difficult to track because we didn't always keep records of volcanoes, and we have sensors everywhere now, right? But I would say this. They're becoming quite some of these older volcanoes, right? For example, in Naples, they didn't know there was a caldera below Naples. They didn't know there was a caldera below New York City. Nobody knew that. They didn't know that. They found these things out after they built the cities, right? After, 6 million people live in or 2 million people live in certain spots over Naples and millions here and millions there. After the fact, they found out these things are waking up. But they're waking up. And they're going to continue to wake up. How do you track that? You can track that very easily by tracking solar activity. The more the sun acts out of character, the more the Earth is going to respond likewise, because we're actually capturing galactic cosmic rays from the same source. But we're going to hit a tipping point. And what that means is, as we continue to have this chaotic regions in the magnetosphere, as these holes form, is going to mess up the ozone. There's no way life will exist under any area where the ozone is not. They found this out in 2004 when they called an emergency meeting, and all this global warming stuff popped up, right? Went full speed ahead. Why? Because it was an emergency that had nothing to do with global warming, and it had everything to do with what happens when the ozone is missing, for real. There were areas that nobody could go into. A portion of our atmosphere was knocked off. Yes, and it was knocked off by a magnetar, and that spawned all this global warming talk. That's where it all came from. They had emergency meetings right after they detected that hit to the atmosphere from a magnetar. You didn't feel anything. Nobody felt anything except those who were in the immediate area. They had areas of this earth no person could walk under, because if you did, it would be like stepping into a microwave, and you would not live long, right? That's without the ozone. That's what the entire earth is going to face, but not all at one time, in different places, at different times. Imagine we wake up one day, no ozone over Chicago, right? Then it comes back that day, but it's missing in Alaska. Then it starts shifting and moving and changing and doing all these things. That's what we're going to face. That's what's happening right now. And during the chaotic region or chaotic era of the flipping of the magnetic poles, the time of chaos for the magnetosphere is a very deadly time. Even now we're losing crops. You'll find that out this summer. Many of you will ask, how in the world do we have a drought with all the moisture that we have? How are the lake levels low with all the moisture that we're having? Where is the fresh water? That's what you'll be asking, right? Are they answering those questions now? No, they're not. They're not. But as with most things, when they start to happen, they're going to become the expert on why they're happening when they don't even know it's, they're not thinking about that right now. Take note that most of these folks do what they do for money, which means they have bosses, which means they get paid to do what the bosses want them to do, so all their time is going towards what their bosses want them to do. So appreciate, right, those Christians who study these areas. Do that. In fact, it's been the Christians who have been the dependable ones this year. You guys remember when I was talking about the weather phenomena, right? 8 years ago? Nobody. Yeah, we're not going to have storms like that. We're not going to have rain like that. We're not going to have this like that. Of course you get deniers. But all of you guys that were aware of that, you weren't shocked when it began to happen. Right? You weren't shocked. You could still think. Now, some people are in total, absolute shock over the weather. But you're not. Why? Because you had prior knowledge. You didn't have to believe it. You heard it. You saw it forming. And it's only the beginning, because now we have to, there were wind speeds, right, clocked at 225 miles an hour. Sustained winds, not gusts, sustained winds. There are isobars right now forming over the USA and some out to sea. Next year, we're going to see isobars packed so tightly, they'll go from county to county. And do you know what that means? With no storm, if you look at a map right now and you see a low pressure system like the one that formed right below the Great Lakes, if you start to look at some of the white lines they draw around the pressure system, right, the low pressure system, those are isobars. The closer they are, the higher the wind speeds, right? This year coming up, if we can, if no war breaks out, we still have television communication, you're going to see isobars so tightly packed, it'll look like a white blob on weather maps. That means 178 mile an hour winds without a hurricane, without a tornado. You know what they called the high-speed winds? I believe it was 2000 and was it 13, 2014, 15, somewhere around there. They called it a derecho. They have two new names with hurricanes now. Two new names. They'll be using those next year, if not this year. It's by grace and mercy alone. We've not been smacked by those hurricanes. But imagine a persistent storm that's trapped in the Gulf of America. Imagine a hurricane that's trapped in the Gulf of America for about 2 months. Let that sink in. Then imagine other hurricanes forming, and they get trapped. And they stay right there where they are, going around in circles for months, a couple of months. And imagine more forming. And then we start having these persistent storms, like the big red spot on Jupiter. Some of these persistent storms on Saturn, things like that. Think about that. The oceans will become a dangerous place. But just in case you have not noticed, the coastlines are changing quickly for all places. Do you know that homes are eroding on most most of the coast of continents right now? The waters are eroding the foundations of most houses and, properties. Florida is being absolutely eroded, but they have engineers working night and day trying to prop Florida up. It's just simply not going to last long. There are certain places of Florida that are underwater right now. Some of you guys know this. You go to certain parks, the benches are underwater. It's just we're having sea level rises, right? There are large ice sheets breaking off right now as we speak. They go way down deep into the ocean. They're melting. They're melting off. It's going to change the chemistry of the water. Remember the houses in Carolina? Remember them that fell off in the water? That was from beach erosion, right? Beach erosion is actually beginning to affect a lot of properties. Lots of properties. It'll just get greater and greater and greater. All of this, in which the sun and the magnetosphere is a catalyst. It's a catalyst for these things. And we're the ones that have to endure it. So we're in a time right now of great development, right? Well, great optical development of these things that people thought they would never see. But also a time when humanity is degrading into something you may not recognize in a very short time. Remember, the Bible says with humanity, they will become hostile. They'll also become lovers of self more than God. And what that truly means is you'll notice people more and more scooting their faith out of the way, making room for themselves. See, when man is safe and they have no problems and they feel nothing can get them, that's when you'll find out what they really want. You'll never know what somebody truly wants until they don't need their faith anymore. Do you know the Lord sends us through trials? Many people call them good times. Those are not good times. Those are trials. When you're put in a position where everything is going right, do you not know that's a trial? It's a trial. It's a trial to see if we'll call out on the living God or not, if we'll praise his name or not. Do you know that? So there are times in your life, how people say trials are bad, this, that, and the other. I'm telling you about a trial that is real, that God spoke about. It's a trial when everything goes right. And people think that's a time When they're doing well? No, it's a time when you're being tried to see if you love the Lord your God with all of what you are. Do you know what most people do when that happens? They do what they want to do. They don't seek the Lord for instruction. They make up their own instruction. In like manner, when things are going right, people do something that's terrible. You ready? They think they're right about everything they speak about in the Word of God. Because people will say, well, my life is working okay, so I must be doing everything right. I'm blessed. That's what they'll think. And likewise, they'll think their interpretation of Scripture is correct. The way they're looking at things is correct. How do we know that? Because when everything goes wrong, the first thing they utter is, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. Isn't that what they say? When their life seems to fall apart, they say, I don't know what I'm doing wrong. So what does that mean? That means they thought they were doing everything right. That's what it means. Why am I saying that? We can never afford to do that. We have to remember that. You will be challenged with a reprieve. And I tell you right now, it's a trial. It's a trial. Do you hear me? It's a trial. And if you mess it up, see, the Lord has a promise that in your goodness, if you do not regard him, he will make an open display of you in a way where you'll never do it again. If he loves you, he's going to correct you. And in this case, he said he'll do it openly. He'll do it. So keep that in your minds. I know a lot of people look at trials as though there's some terrible thing that's about to happen. In truth, that is terrible. It is terrible that a person will have everything they want and they step away from their faith. Expect a trial like that in your own personal lives. Please remember that. Please remember that. Folks, it's that time. It's 9:05. Is it? Am I correct here? Let me see. Let me get the time right here. I have maybe off a little bit. Yes, it is. On the East Coast, it is. You guys have to forgive me. I had a small shock here. Anyway, what I'm adding to what I was saying, right now, the chaotic time of the shielding of the earth will soon excel. It'll excel. Can a passing object make it worse? Yes, it can. But for the most part, the chaos in the magnetic shielding of the earth begins on the inside of the earth. The magnetic shielding reflects the activity inside the earth. Inside the earth is starting to become chaotic. That will reflect on the magnetic field lines of force. It's going to reflect on that. So as the inside becomes chaotic, so will the outside. I'm talking about the core of the earth. So as we see volcanism on a very different level, right? And now you're duly informed. Well, back about 45,000 years ago, they saw the auroras all the way down to the equator. Now, how would they even know that somebody saw auroras all the way down to the equator? Because every time we have an aurora over any part of the earth, it leaves a radioactive signature. What you're actually seeing, those colors in the atmosphere, right, are high-speed particles colliding with nitrogen and oxygen and other particulates in the sky. And each one at a specific altitude shows a specific color. So there's fallout from that. And they can track that in the soil. In any living thing, you can track that. And we will come to a time the moon unmasks itself. Those days are coming too. My goodness. I can't say too much about that because that will spoil some of the things that are coming out in our study of Revelation, which, by the way, will become quite meaty, quite controversial, right? But we're sticking with the scriptures here in Revelation. We're not deviating. Okay, that's Mondays and Tuesdays. Although you guys will have some things to look at, throughout the week in our study of Revelation as I build up on our study pages, getting everything ready for the next two studies, Monday and Tuesday of this upcoming week. All right. Well, hope you guys are duly informed because we're in that consequential area of life right now, and we will see many things manifest. We will see many things. Somebody says 37 days of darkness. I'll tell you, just in case you don't understand that, I was awakened one time, guys. Right? I was awakened. I was having a pretty good sleep. But I was awakened by a trumpet blast that went right through my bones. That's what it felt like. Before that trumpet blast went off, I saw nothing but black. But I heard people talking. And they were asking for me. And they were talking to me. And I said, how did these people know my name? Right? But they were only using Michael, just like many of you out there use it. This was long before I was doing this. Right? Long before. I said, why do all those people know me? That made me nervous. Nobody's supposed to know, me. And it was dark, and they said, how long is this darkness going to last? And a voice beside me said, tell them 37 days. And I told them, I said 37 days. And when I said that, that trumpet blast went off. That trumpet blast was so loud, it went through my bones. It went right through my bones. And so I never forgot that. So when everybody talks about some 3 days of darkness, there's no confirmation in me of anything about 3 days of darkness. But there is regarding 37 days of darkness. Anyway, that's where it came from. That's where it came from. Oh, and I know our electrical grid can so easily be compromised. I know it can. In fact, I know that in certain strategic areas, they're going to try. We didn't get a chance to talk about Venezuela. That is a very important topic. It's also a very heartbreaking topic, but a very important topic. Maybe I can come on later and talk about that just a little bit by way of what... I have to be careful with that, though. I think everybody should be careful with that topic. Be responsible. For example, if you know something about Venezuela, but it will do nothing but inflame combat, then don't say it. Don't say it. Right? Don't say it. I can see the room right now. I can see it right now. They said they had problems, guys, with the audio. Is tonight's audio choppy also? Or is it okay? Is it okay? Norton. Mods, you should really have Norton, and run it on restart. It does a good job with that. Of course, I don't know why their customer service is still like it is, but Norton does a really good job of watching for things. Really good job. My advice to anybody with anything like that is to download Norton, right? Download Norton antivirus. Load it on your system, give your system a restart, and it will begin to kick off everything that's not supposed to be there. That's going to start up that's in all things. So give it a try. I do not trust the other antivirus softwares. I found them to be liars. Have you ever had a virus software that tells you have a virus that's not there? See, I know how to manually check and manually update apps in your operating systems. You guys should know how to do that with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 keystrokes. You can update all of your apps on your device, on your computer too, for Windows and Mac, right? You can check and see what's running, what's out of date, and have those updated just like antivirus does. You can also run integrity of all programs on there just like an antivirus does, and about 6 keystrokes. These are commands that you can give your device without looking at the screen. You can even restart your peripherals, like your video card. You ever have your screen go black? You have to restart. You can restart your video card with 4 keystrokes, right? You can do that. No, it's not through the BIOS. These are, well, some of it is ran through the BIOS. These are core commands that Windows receives and passes on to the core of your system to run it, to give an outside command to your system to do what it needs to do. Only you can do that. Or if you, with Norton can sometimes do it if you give it permission. But usually nobody employs those things because it doesn't work very well when you try it by software. So it's something physical you have to employ. Something physical. All right, guys, I'm rambling enough. All right? I'm going to be back in the chat here a little later. Michael, do you think LifeLock is effective? I know for a fact it's effective. I know for a fact it's effective. So, yes, it is. It is effective. It is. Did you guys know that Insure contacted me? That's a funny thing. I think they want to know about my Insure experience. I think they want to know about that. That's a very good I tell you what, guys, I'm going to put that on the web and the web only. And if anybody from Insure wants to know about it, they can access the website too. I'm going to put it on the web. I think that everybody and anybody should know the results of that test. All right? I think you should. It is most certainly, Insure is not a drink. It is a meal. That's what it is. So you have to have water with every meal, right? Don't forget that with your Insure. Don't forget that. Or it'd be just like eating a bunch of burgers without drinking anything. Okay? So they said, well, the only picture they could put on their product would be the COT. As long as they don't put it on the bad tasting engine, because all Insures do not taste alike. I'm sorry, they do not. They do not. I found one to taste pretty good. The rest will not go down my throat. That's the truth. They got to work on the flavors. They really have to work on the flavors. Guys, listen, I'm going to see you guys later. More than likely I'll be on tonight. Okay, more than likely. Because I'm going to be covering some Venezuela issues. If you guys don't mind, I would love for you guys to be prepared if it develops into something extensive. It would do my soul well to have you all prepared for that. So I just may discuss that subject tonight. Is it a non-subject? No, it's a subject I believe that everybody ought to look into. They ought to see it for what it is, spiritually, and know the result of it. That's my advice. So I may see you all, yes, at midnight, okay? May see you all at midnight, which will be before midnight, actually, but at midnight. God bless you guys. I don't want to keep you. Remember, next week, we will attempt to get everything shuffled over. I believe that's Monday, isn't it? That's pretty quick, Monday. My goodness gracious, always something in it. But and some of you guys out there, if you have anything like we're doing, right? You're standalone. You don't actually use WordPress or any other tool to help you develop a website. If you do it yourself, please note the conformance issues that will, they're coming. So you may have to switch your environment also. I know that HTML is going to require some wrappers and some other things to stay functional. So you're going to have to learn some new techniques. I know that everything I have to learn, I have to smash in a 1 week period. That ought to be fun. I'm going to have to do that, though. But keep that in mind. I'll keep you posted and updated on everything as we go forward. Okay? God bless and keep all of you. I'm going to see you guys next time right here at COT, which could be in a few hours. God bless and keep all of you. I'll see you next time right here at the Council of Time. God bless.